Okay, we got Finance Committee, September 20th, 10 a.m. Please call the roll.
Alt.
Here.
Bowers.
Yes.
Curtis.
Yeah.
Sticknut.
Present.
Young. Johnson.
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Yeah, I'll move.
Got that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll move to public comments. No public comments. And we'll move on to the discussion of the fiscal year 2020 budget. Okay, so everybody should have their book updated. The first page is kind of the high-level summary. You can see that the budget shortfall as it sits right now is $95,605. There were some changes from the last version you saw in revenue. Bob Yergler gave an updated number on the property tax. I think that's the only adjustment there. So that was in our favor, so that's a good thing. We did talk with Mr. Raymond here about the contribution from the general fund to the joint dispatch and move that back down to 120,000 from the 167,000 that he was had been requesting and was in that version. But
We've got a problem with that. After a conversation with Jill and myself, we found that the transfer to retirement fund is consistent of FICA, federal income tax, and it also includes the 7.56% for IMRF, which put the number of about an additional 40,000. That makes ETSB's contribution approximately 284,000, which we flat cannot afford, in my opinion. So we're going to need to discuss some way that we can try and help ETSB out, because almost $300,000 worth of expenses to go to joint dispatch on top of our other required expenses for next gen is going to be challenging at best.
well, I guess nobody has money for it then. Okay. So scratch that. I guess we're $135,000 in the hole. And I don't know that there was many other changes there. What I had Jill put together, if you see on the back side of that piece of paper, was these were kind of the big, at the bottom of that sheet, there's where she has, it says big dollar line item increases. These are things that increased, kind of the big significant ones that it increased versus the 2019 budget. Some of those things, I don't know that there's anything we can do about them. One, the election judge salaries, I think that's reflection of we got the presidential election and stuff, and that one just goes up in a cyclical fashion, so that's an example of that. But, that one for sure, I know there's not much we can do about that. The software contract licenses, is that the most up-to-date number here? Okay. So that is not a whole lot of negotiating power on those things, unless somebody's going to negotiate with Microsoft and those guys.
Is that just area-wide though?
No, it goes to the software companies.
The
those
actual
licenses.
companies, okay, okay.
This has been, since I've been involved, a big, Troy used to always get annoyed with that number when he was on the board. But there's not much you can do about it, because other than not have the software.
And they don't have any special groupings for like municipalities or anything like that they'll do bartering with? Because I know sometimes based on population, they'll do stuff like that if you actually contact them direct.
Okay, I can look into that.
What is this library for the courts? Do they have to keep that updated or have they let it go for a year?
They have let it go, they didn't do anything on last year, right?
So they,
The law
but they
library.
didn't spend any money then, huh? Last year.
They didn't ask for an increase last year.
Oh.
I think that comes around every so many years that they have to do a big update.
You know what number that is?
230.
230?
Oh, yeah, so it's right there. We need to look into that one for sure. Regardless, we probably, the reason why I had to put those together, because these are big dollar items that are changing, and we need to bridge the gap, so on things that are,
So that group insurance, is that with that 12% increase that,
7.5 is what we came back with, from Susie yesterday after meeting with her. She's at 7.5 increase, and she's planning on coming to finance to talk on, some other options, but, we're looking at 7.5 versus the 12.
either way, that's awful. That's double last year.
nationally, it's awful. We have our Democrat friends for that one. The other thing that we need to make a decision on is if you go, there's all these salaries that are listed here. If you go, I guess, 2 pages down, where it says non-union there and proposed fiscal year 20 salary. So skip over the union page, front and back, and then go to the non-union page. The proposed fiscal year 20 salary is what they requested in their budget. As you can see, there's a lot of inconsistency there, so Jill put together, if we gave them a 2% increase, if we gave them a 2.5% increase, if we gave them a 3% increase, what that would look like. So you can see the total of those non-union workers is, as requested, is $1,005,000, almost $1,006,000. If we did 2% increase there, it would be 983.5. 2.5 would be 987, almost 988. So there's about 20 to 18 to, I guess, last year we did a 2% increase, so that would be about $22,000 worth of savings there. A 2.5% would be about $18,000 worth of savings. Jill's saying that the unions basically are what, at 2.5%?
As of right now.
As of right now. The union workers are, that's roughly where they're at, but last year we did 2%, so we need to make a decision on that. That's a big number there. To make them consistent. And I think that's, as far as the general fund goes, kind of the main things we need to talk about is kind of getting the salary, making a decision on that where we want to be. And then, and I'm not saying all this has to be done today, but look at these big dollar line item increases that we were just looking at, the library, the software contracts. If we can do something better on that, obviously we're all for it. And these other requests that are kind of the big line items that are called out there, or anything else that's in the book that we think we don't need. We need to, I guess, go through those things and figure out how to bridge this big gap we got. So,
We got to come up with 135,000 to make it.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
it's 95 other than this issue Eric just brought up.
Well, that's a union, but it's 11%.
Oh, because it included his raise, his promotion. Was it?
What is our
Yes.
cost per resident compared to other counties to run 911?
I think I told you last.
Yes, you
time. I figured that out. Let me see. Sorry, it's $19.75 per citizen.
I'm sorry, what was it?
$19.
Almost $20 a person.
What's other counties then?
That I'm not sure.
No idea. Just seems like all of our costs keep ballooning. Law library. Is that the one?
Yeah.
No, that's 350. No. What page, where is that at? This law. Courts library.
35, I believe.
It's 230, but
230.
I guess it's in numerical order.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question.
And funds.
What's that?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
How much did the 7.5% insurance,
Mhm.
is that in their books?
Yes.
So it costs $19 and what?
75 cents.
How about jurors' fees? We got $50,000 in there, that's at 235 jurors. They haven't spent $50,000 yet, if I'm reading this right, but the forecasting 75. Is there something that's gone up that we have to pay on?
I think it was state mandated, didn't it?
I'm at 7.5%. That's the same, everything's the same, or?
Yeah. And we did talk to Susie, she's gonna look into, seeing if we can get either a cap for it for the next 3 years, or, something in that kind of situation where the next year or 3 years we could get, we would expect it to stay the same at least, so she's working on that for us right now.
Is how many different companies does she check with, or does she?
I'm not sure how many different companies, I know she provided us with some information on, Health Alliance versus United Healthcare. And they were kind of similar, but there was a lot more, restrictions with United Healthcare, and for the price difference and the cost of switching everybody over, especially if they're in the middle of procedures and whatnot, it was just gonna be kind of a headache. I mean, she'll present those at the finance meeting, she's got all the information.
I know nobody wants to change insurance or anything else, but that's still,
Well, what I was gonna say is that, like, personally, we buy our own insurance and for a couple employees and stuff, and the price keeps going up at those rates, but actually the coverage keeps getting worse at the
worse,
same
yeah,
time.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, in a way, the fact that it's going up 7.5% and the coverage is the same is almost better than, I would say, the
Yeah.
national standard. Now, that still isn't good, but
No, but
it's,
I think this just proves that 1 year, if they don't gouge you, the next year, they will. Pretty sure.
yeah.
Well, I think the big thing is to figure out these salary increases. To get them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just looming right there.
Yeah, that's the biggest one that some kind of a decision needs to be made on.
So with the 7.5% increase on the insurance,
Mhm.
how much will that actually affect? I know how it affects us, but how will that actually affect per paycheck for the employees? So if they were given a 2% increase, how much of that would they actually see versus a 2.5%?
right? They're actually gonna pay more in premiums, it's gonna be, for single, we talked about this yesterday, I don't know if you remember, for single and, employee plus spouse and employee plus child, it was gonna go up $10, was it?
About 8 to 10.
Yeah, about $8 to $10, and then for
Per
family.
paycheck or just
Yes, per
per
paycheck,
paycheck?
and then for family, it was gonna go up, was it 50? Possibly, yeah, it was between 40 and, we'll say $40 was what it came up to, and that's per paycheck as well.
Oh, so that's family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they get paid how many times a year?
26.
26?
Where do you come up with 7.5? Because and I get it's probably based on the number of people, but I'm like looking at that group insurance trust fund. Is that the right spot to be looking at that?
Group insurance is the 110,615. The first line, group insurance, that's where the 7.5% comes from.
110 what?
110,615. It's the general fund other.
Okay.
So, and I get number of people change and stuff, but so if I take 462 compared to 410 that was in the budget, that's like 12.5% increase.
Well, it's also dependent on, the employees and what insurance they were taking. How much our portion would be, because we pay 25% of, employee only, and we pay 50%, or I'm sorry, 75% of employee only, and then we pay 50%, so that kind of changes it too, as far as how much our cost is gonna be.
Let me this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's fiscal 19,
Mm-hmm.
then when you have the 2%, you have it at the same. Is that because of starting time? That's the only one I see it on, that I don't see an increase. Actually,
It may have just been a formula.
and then the 2.5 didn't go up either.
It didn't, okay. Then I must, I just had a formula error in there. I'll fix that.
Is this
No matter
forecast,
How many times you look at these.
I know.
is this forecast for group insurance 2019, like the most,
Yes, I have to do that as well.
so? Not that I want this to be the case, but if it goes up 7.5%, that's not even 1% increase right there on the 2020 budget versus the 2019 forecast. Like a 0.5% increase there. Which would be, if it's 7.5 bigger than what that forecast is, there's an extra 30,000 there of expense. Is that 462 number from her, or where did that number come from?
No, that was, I went ahead and did, and I think I included it in your original, information for the, sorry, it's just really slow. I had a spreadsheet that, included everybody's, the number of employees that we currently had and, the total cost, and I went ahead and took it off of there and changed it to 7.5%, and that's how I got my total, there, and that was on the original, budget sheets that I had given you. I included that.
I guess what I'm getting at is this number a lot bigger than what we're showing here? Because if the forecast is 459,000, then we're off by $30,000.
And again, the forecast is just, it's kind of an average of what it possibly could be, depending on how many employees decide, because I know, for example, Health Department alone, they've gotten, 5 new employees, of which none of them have taken our insurance, so we don't have to pay anything towards that, so it may be different, the forecast versus how many employees we've attained or lost that are taking the insurance or not taking the insurance, because the employees that we did lose, they, all 5 had insurance through us that we paid towards, so.
Anyone have any thoughts on the salaries, the non-union salaries?
Well, just doing some quick math with what the increase would be for the insurance. From a cost containment side, I'd like to say, let's just do a 2% increase, but from a fairness side with that insurance increase, I don't feel it's fair not to say a 2.5 across the board, because I mean, our hands are tied, I get, but at the same time, I don't wanna drive people away because of what they're paying for insurance either, and that really upsets me, because you think raise and you think more money in your pocket, but
No, it's gonna be a wash.
yeah, so I guess from my vantage point, and I know that it doesn't, I mean, it helps, it doesn't help as much as we'd like, I just don't think that I could justify just only a 2%.
I agree.
And I think that's why I suggested to you the 2.5% when we had talked.
And I sure wish there was a better answer with insurance, because
I guess I understand what you're saying and I agree with it. The problem is that
I know. Well, I
this
guess,
is a national
I know.
issue that every, and the result is that we're gonna have to get rid of something else to make up for that.
And exactly, that's it.
And that,
That's exactly.
at some point, that's gonna have to be the discussion. So I agree with your sentiment and I get it, but
Right.
if
and-
we do that, there's $5,000 more that we gotta
I
cut
know,
out of something else.
I know, and I understand that, and I guess I kind of empathize with the employee and the fact that, you know what, you come to work every day and you try to do your best
I
and
get it.
everything else. I mean,
I get it.
I'd rather cut off of something else and try to make do without than, you know. And unfortunately, that's the attitude that somewhere way down the road doesn't happen, and then it just keeps avalanching towards us, so, you know, let's not finance name brand anything, and let's only buy generic, and let's, you know, that's just the name of the game.
I would say we tentatively assume 2.5. I don't think we need to make that a final decision now, because we got a long way to go. But just for penciling in numbers perspective to try and bridge the gap, we do that for the time being. And kind of adjust the number we're trying to erase based off of that, with the notion that we may have to change that for some reason. So that would move the 95,605 on the front page down to 77,552 by my math. We did, if we pencil in 2.5%. And then we still have Eric's 40,000-ish issue. I don't know that that's the county's full problem. A third of it was our problem, that's 13,000-ish to the negative.
What do you,
Sorry, I was
No,
saying, he was saying there's $40,000
Oh,
extra in
oh.
cost.
I was not.
So
on-
we're saving 18,053,
Right, gotcha.
which would
Okay.
get us down to 77,552. There's still a negative thing there,
Gotcha.
how that's dealt with.
Just
I was
wasn't
just saying, I don't
looking to
think
where you were going
the
with Eric.
40,000, I don't think is the county's full problem, but it's a problem nonetheless. And if a third of it was our problem, it would be 13,000, so it'd about nearly wipe out what we just are penciling in there. One area I will note, and I know there's reasons, and technically this board has no jurisdiction over that. The automation funds that you see in the revenues worksheet, which is 3, 4, 5 pages below the front page, the one that starts off at the top where it says property taxes. If you go down towards the bottom of that, where you get down to the total revenues of $5,456,524,000. These automation funds that are from the county clerk, the circuit clerk, court documents, you see that for 2020 it's 5, 25, 25. We have no rights to that, as it's been explained to me. The circuit, that is the circuit clerk's money, that is the county recorder's money. They can choose to do whatever they want to, and they have been gracious enough over the years to donate. As you look back in time, generally the number up until 2019, the current year, was 25,000 from each of those, as you see in the 2018 actual. Kind of, I guess the county clerk was always a little more variable, but the circuit clerk and the court document's been pretty consistent on 25 each year up until this last year, where they all had given an additional amount. Again, we have no right to do anything on that, but I do know Lisa Hines did mention that her 25 that she has in there from the circuit clerk was negotiable when she was here. Obviously, that's down from 50 last year, but a lot of that had to do with she was helping to donate more. Was it because of the chillers, John? Over at the courthouse. So some of that she had thrown in extra money for that reason, but she did say that was negotiable. And then, as I just mentioned, the county clerk is obviously down. I guess compared to last year, we were at 100,000. This year, we're sitting at 55,000 from those funds. But again, they don't have to do any of that. So just so everybody understands that, when you look through the revenue items, that's kind of a bigger change. I guess on the money coming inside.
Lisa Fancher also has on there that she's negotiable with the automated recorder fund.
Okay.
She has nothing in there right now, but she's negotiable on.
Okay.
She can transfer.
So,
I think it's good to chop the expenses up and borrow them.
let's not borrow.
I know,
They're-
but you know what I'm saying, if you look at it in the big picture, like, you know, we're dependent on that, I'd rather.
Agreed. Agreed.
It's like birthday money.
That's right, and it's nice that they gave a lot more last year because we had some big capital items that were unfunded, so. Is this 38,000, so I'm looking back on the big dollar line items there on the second page, the back and the front page. Is that phone system thing in there?
In there.
That 38,735, is that in the,
Yeah, it's on the sheet.
so that number,
It's
I
not
would
necessary.
personally say,
Yeah.
we take it out.
Mhm.
For those of you that aren't on IT committee, they've been talking about changing the phones, but technically, I don't think there's anything immediately critical. It's something, the other thing is that I think they were looking to get other bids and different things, and if I wasn't mistaken, right?
We have two, yeah,
We
we
have
have
two,
one from
but
Erie
they're-
Wide, one from Centrex, yeah,
But they were gonna, I think,
or Goodman.
yeah, there was, but it's not necessarily a critical thing to do right now, and
Okay.
quite frankly, I would scratch that. unless somebody has a reason. Okay, Sheriff,
I don't have a reason to scratch that. I do,
okay,
on my budget, the 110 general fund, 210 sheriff.
okay,
I've looked at it, and as of right now, I've got about $17,000 in reductions. So in that line item, 65,575, which is service contracts. We've been paying snow removal out of that and splitting that with the admin center. I'm pretty comfortable coming down 10,000 off of that instead of 35,000, it'd be 25.
okay,
And then on down 66,400, which is leads. We have 11,000 budgeted for that. We could go to 5. The state is not charging us the leads fee as of right now because of some upgrades they're doing. That's a cost we split with the city.
Okay.
So that could come down to 5,000, and then the household supplies, the 79,030 could come down 1,000 from 14 to 13.
okay. You need to show up more often. Okay, thank you.
Well, the big thing for us is the snow removal. The
Yeah.
last 2 years, between the two buildings, we've paid about 38,000 each year for that snow removal, which if we're gonna be doing it in-house now, I know there's initial cost.
Upfront cost, yeah.
Purchase the truck from highway department and that, but, we should see a substantial savings there on snow removal.
Sure.
And salt.
Along that line, is there money then in the, if he's got 35, is that, then there's a compromise, is that the total amount?
No, there should be.
There should be another corresponding amount, so
For
theoretically
the
another,
county board side of it.
for the county
admin
board side,
center,
right.
We used to split the cost of snow removal, so that may be able to come down.
Another, yeah.
As well.
okay.
How much was this total?
17.
How much?
I'm just gonna write this. I know I'll have, what do we gain on the 18053? This is,
2 plus 17.
how many, well, I was just gonna split out the snow removal into one. Do we think we can take down a total of 20? Is that reasonable?
I don't see the numbers on the admin center service contracts, so whatever that number is at would probably include snow removal.
And the 110,710, and it's currently at, this contract is currently at 33,000.
The leads will be plus 6,000. Cause it'll go from 11 down to 5.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
One ten seven?
Mm-hmm. Should be right after 110,615.
Do you know how much was for the snow removal?
We had the 110,710, service contract line at 33,000. So when they take some snow removal out of that, they can probably be cut 10,000 as well.
So 20 total for, That's 45,000.
If I could just comment on the phone situation, sheriffs and my phones are not any player into this, but if I recall, it is on the significantly older side. Some of the technology is not available, so if some phones start breaking during the year, you may not be able to get replacements. Sorry, don't shoot the messenger, I just wanna make sure you're all aware.
Well, we talked about it in IT. I understand we can,
It's in 145 something.
Any news on our wish list?
Something down the general.
No. Not sitting up there holding the big glory pot.
No, this is just general.
so that would get us right around 50,000 in the hole. Little over 50,000. 50,500.
$52.
Somebody needs to resign. Joke.
Replaced.
Vote somebody off the island next. Okay. Well. I guess we need to continue to work on that, but just one other thing, non-general fund related, that was on the back side of this, the first sheet. You see there's the money that the sheriff and Eric are, money that we're talking about for the public safety fund. So the sheriff had requested, what was the total again, 350?
295.5.
295, just short of 300, for 2 new officers, 3 new vehicles, and equipment for the vehicles. And that was in his original request. Part of the, before Eric came in today, 200,000 was, there's a bunch of stuff for this next gen in his original budget, and he was requesting 125,000 from the public safety fund. What we were talking about doing was moving that up and use more of the public safety for these capital items for the next gen. There's also
If you go to-
grants and different things like that that are available, so we don't, that's kind of a moving number that it's hard to know, and I don't know that anybody has to approve that before the end of the fiscal year, because I think we could decide that as we, or I mean, ahead of the new fiscal year, with regards to some of that capital stuff, because I think he has to apply for grants in December, and some of that stuff we could kind of decide as this year went around, or went along, but needless to say, before his thing today, that could be, if there were no grants, as much as $200,000 that he would need for that, which it sounds like there are grants, so hopefully I'm hoping that's an overinflated number, but that's a,
I'm praying for an overinflated number
Exactly.
myself, but
But-
until I know exactly what we're getting.
and we're, I think, what did we say, Jill? Did you print off that sheet even for me or no? I got
She,
the public safety thing. The one you sent me. It's okay, I got something from that. Right now, there's $420,000 in that account,
yeah, okay, that one I have to figure out.
and we're getting, what was it, average,
Average per year is 421,000.
so we're getting $420,000 in each year, and there's already $420,000 in the account. So theoretically, if we spent nothing, by the end of next fiscal year, we would have $840,000 in there. But obviously,
Yeah, probably a little more than that, because you got a few more months to collect in this fiscal year.
so I guess that's kind of how big of the pie there is. Just assume there's 420 entered in there each year, and the sheriff was requesting almost $300,000. Some in capital, some for new employees. And then there's the stuff with Eric as well. The good thing about Eric's is it's good, but hopefully those are some one-time things that aren't recurring. Not that there aren't future capital expenses and things that need to be done, but the theoretical 200,000, which hopefully is less than that because we get grants and stuff, that isn't an every year type of thing. So my point of saying that is if we got 420 now and we end up, if we don't spend anything by the end of fiscal year 2020 at 840, and the sheriff took 300 and he took 500, we would be at, or 300 and 200, we would be at 340,000 ending balance at the end of 2020 with still more money coming in. So I'm not saying that's what we want to do or we have to make a decision now, but I just want people to understand that theoretically we could pay for those things and not be in the hole, so to speak. But those are decisions that we're going to have to make.
Refresh me on that iPod service contract from.
The iPods from EMA it's actually an annual subscription is what Eric Susie had said, and it's the text,
But we
ability to
didn't
text.
approve that yet.
There is one other, I guess, along that line. So that's a public safety fund. That's not the general fund. So it's a whole nother can of worms. Good thing is it seems to have money. But I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But in the name of, we have done some capital things for sheriff, court, 911 related things out of there. While we're throwing stuff at that, there is this $15,000 the sheriff had requested for the courthouse jail and steps.
Right.
Just throwing that out there that maybe there would be sufficient funds to maybe contribute to some of that in the public safety fund, which would help our general fund costs theoretically for something like that. But might be another thing to think about.
I think whenever you consider the use of public safety money, you also have to remember that money can disappear very quickly.
Yeah.
If the citizens in the county decide that they don't wanna pay it anymore and establish a referendum on the ballot and do away with it, it won't be there.
I agree.
So we can't count on that being there every year going forward.
Sure.
I don't know of anybody at the moment that's doing it or thinking of doing that, but it's still there.
Sure.
Well, and as a side note, I don't know of any counties that have established one where it has ever been taken back. I think it'd be a foolish step to do. So, I mean, I guess we can always think the doomsday events on it, if revenues fall dramatically, what do we do as a county? But that's for anybody, that's municipalities, the county, the state, whatever. The numbers that I gave you budgeted in the IMRF contributions and the insurance contributions for those two employees, which is $25,000. If you want to reimburse those accounts out of the public safety, and then There's also 20,000 of that is the initial startup cost for the uniforms and equipment for those 2 deputies and the training academy too. So that 20,000 for the employee, the 135 for the 2 employees includes the uniforms, their equipment and training. So that 20,000 wouldn't show up the following year for their salaries.
Is that insurance considering this or no? The insurance number you gave it, the group insurance number you gave us earlier include his 2 new employees or no? Okay, so then that's not really gonna help us on,
It
It's
won't help you
but,
on
yeah.
that, but it'll be a
right,
reimbursement
sure.
from the public safety to the
Yeah.
insurance.
So, yeah, okay. It's not a missing expense, at least on the general fund side. No.
So far as that public safety tax, and I'm speaking for myself here, but the IPAWS, which is new, and that 6,500, I'd like to entertain that next year maybe, but I feel like that's a cuttable expense for this year, which would then put us more in line for doing what Derek needs done and for helping Eric out.
Right.
We're way less, I mean, I know it's only $6,500, but you know what, it cuts it, so. And there was some things he couldn't answer about that. Maybe by next year, that'll be a little bit more perfected and we can entertain it again, but my personal opinion, while we're being vicious cutting things, let's just go for the gusto there, and
Well, that's annual too.
and it is an annual thing, so exactly, once you start that,
Yeah.
we gotta budget that in all the time, and I don't know that we're at that point right now.
I would agree. I guess we're not finalizing the public.
Right,
Public
I'm
safety,
just-
but I think that's worth
right.
stating, and I would argue in line with that, then we move down the stairs and take it out of the general fund. Do you think that seems reasonable, everyone?
I do.
And assume that we're gonna do it, but it would come from public safety money, not from the general fund? Any
Or even split it.
thoughts or comments, or, yeah, do something like
Split
that?
it.
Something that needs to be done.
I think we gotta do it, quite frankly, in order to bridge the gap, unless someone has some opposition to it. I'll write that up here. I don't know that splitting does us any good, Sharon.
I know, well, it would be easier just to take it, yeah, one on one.
I get what you're saying, but
Yeah, no, it just looks nicer.
I don't. Moving in the right direction. I guess those were kind of the things that came to my mind. I don't know, unless somebody else has something else specifically that we want to discuss. We do have to get clear on this, how to deal with the joint dispatch and all of that, for sure. That's another thing looming over all this. We got another finance committee, obviously, here 2 weeks from yesterday, so it's, maybe we can, everybody look at the book and go through and you wanna take a picture of that or copy it down, whatever, as an assumption, or write it on the front page there on, kind of as an adjustment. And we can all go home and look over things, and somebody comes up with a brilliant idea, or we get the sheriff to give us another 30,000.
Would you like
Take a
me to
look.
talk to, Lisa Fancher about her negotiable with the automation as well?
I think at some point that might need, we need to have some discussions probably about that, yeah. And Lisa Hines as well. I mean, the reality is we are getting, obviously the joint dispatch is looming over that, but we're,
Is public health still through
we're about 30,000, whatever, from 500. From,
Public health still doing the
we got her narrowed down pretty good, so. Um, I would just say, unless somebody has an opposition to it, we wrap up the meeting and go home and do our homework and have more discussions, whatever needs to be done, and come back at the next finance committee meeting and
Did you need a motion for that?
solve everything. I think we gotta go through, is there old business, is there new business? Anybody have old business, anybody have new business? And then we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?